More than a year and a half before 9/11, two counterterrorism officials in the United States government began warning that Osama bin Laden was preparing to kill as many people as possible and that he had this country in the crosshairs. For the most part, their words of warning were ignored. Now, Dan Benjamin and Stephen Simon, former directors of the National Security Council's counter-terrorism team under the Clinton White House, have written a book about what led to September 11th. In their book, they take dead aim at former FBI Director Louis Freeh and say of the FBI, quote, "Its record is indefensible. Its leadership must bear much of the blame for not preventing the deaths of 3,000 people."
There were key, really essential national security issues in which the FBI just simply refused to cooperate. We got very little information on terrorism.
Dan Benjamin and Steve Simon thought they were entitled to the very best information the FBI had. After all, Benjamin was the director of the National Security Council's counterterrorism team. Steve Simon was the group's senior director.
Where the FBI is not coming forward and volunteering this national security information, it's going to have an effect on the country's ability to defend itself against this new and radical threat.
The two men, under the direction of the White House, led a group of foreign policy specialists responsible for strategizing this country's military, intelligence, and diplomatic actions.
We would come into the office every morning, and we'd turn on our computers, and we would see that there would be 300 or so cables or messages that had come from the CIA, that had come from the State Department, that had come from the Defense Department, all with information that was relevant to our work, all of it about terrorism. There was never one message from the FBI. We were not getting anything.
What kind of information did Benjamin and Simon want? Anything they could get on people like this. Ayman al-Zawahiri, long acknowledged as bin Laden's right-hand man. In 1998, Benjamin and Simon learned that Zawahiri had actually done some fundraising in the United States in the early 90s. So they checked with the FBI to see what the Bureau knew about it.
In a meeting at the White House, we said to them, "This is incredible. Zawahiri was here. He must have been fundraising. He had to have handlers. What can you tell us?" And the FBI official said, "We got it covered. Don't worry about it." And, you know, it was a blow-off.
Benjamin and Simon say part of the problem with the FBI was personal.
Morning. Please sit down.
The fact that Louis Freeh didn't like President Clinton was no secret. But few suspected that would have consequences for national security.
I think he did scorn the president. He held the president in contempt.
And how did this affect counterterrorism?
Well, I think the main effect was in the way the White House and FBI communicated on this crucial issue.
One of the important points about the FBI is that in this period it viewed itself as being an independent branch of government. The FBI director did not take orders from the Attorney General.
Wait a minute. Every 7th grade civic student knows the FBI answers to the Justice Department. The Justice Department answers to the President as part of the executive branch of government.
Every 7th grader knew more than the director of the FBI because he was determined to bolster the independence of the FBI, did not take orders from Attorney General Reno, and really was unwilling to cooperate with the White House on issues that that the West Wing considered involved national security.
Benjamin and Simon put their accusations about the FBI and their insights about terrorism into their new book, The Age of Sacred Terror. Told from their perspective inside the Clinton White House, it is the story of a fight against terrorism led by a president under fire, under investigation, and unable to get cooperation from one of his own appointees, FBI Director Louis Freeh.
Now, what's to keep a president of the United States from calling up the director of the FBI and saying, "Listen, I don't care whether you and the FBI like me or not. I want this information. I want it on my desk by this afternoon."
Well, in principle, there's nothing, and when the system's working well, that's what happens. But when the FBI is investigating the president, you have an incredibly complicated political situation. And the fact of the matter is the FBI was investigating the president for most of the president's term in office. And as a result, the ability to exert pressure on the FBI was very, very limited.
We asked former FBI Director Louis Freeh to respond to Benjamin and Simon, but he declined our request for an interview.
What about the accusation that President Clinton was so entangled with personal problems, his presidency was literally hanging in the balance, that he has a lot to answer for on that score?
I think there's no question that the president's problems in that area created opportunities for his enemies to distract the country from what was an increasingly pressing problem.
I think that's clear, and it's painful because we worked for him and actually found him to be a good president. But this was a problem for the country.
Benjamin and Simon say that even with personal problems and an uncooperative FBI, the Clinton administration does deserve at least some credit for foiling some terrorist operations, like the Millennium Plot to blow up Los Angeles Airport. But they say the United States faced a galaxy of problems in trying to fight terrorism, including legal obstacles. Most Americans didn't know about evidence linking Osama bin Laden to the first attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. The White House wasn't told either. It was part of a sealed grand jury indictment that, by law, could be revealed only to very few people.
Law enforcement knew about it, but the people who would have to order up a snatch operation to go get bin Laden in Afghanistan, they didn't know about it.
The bombings of 2 American embassies in Africa changed that. In August 1998, the Clinton administration ordered missile strikes against what they believed to be bin Laden training camps.
It was an act of responsibility and great urgency, and yet it was immediately dismissed as a wag the dog operation.
That attack prompted accusations that the president had ordered up the cruise missiles to distract the country from a different kind of disaster.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
President Clinton's confession came just 3 days before the missile attack. But Benjamin and Simon say the president was determined to get bin Laden and was more than willing to use the military.
On 2 occasions, the White House asked the Pentagon for options.
They say General Henry Shelton came back with a massive proposal calling for months of buildup and billions of dollars. The White House didn't buy that plan, and the president asked for a smaller special forces operation.
There was still a considerable fear among the senior officers that this could become Desert One, like 1980 in Iran, a disaster that cost a lot of American lives and several helicopters.
Are you telling me or not that it was President Clinton who was pushing the military to do more and the military was saying no?
Oh, I'm absolutely telling you that. And that is the truth. We lived through this. The military had very, very good reasons for not wanting to do this. It was a mission that had no public support. It was a mission that would be difficult. It would be dangerous. But the pressure was on from President Clinton, from the White House entirely.
Candidly, how big a factor, if it was a factor, was the animosity of military officers toward President Clinton?
The really senior military officers, I would say, admired him, but at lower levels, the problem was huge. It was terrible.
Benjamin and Simon say that by the late 1990s, getting bin Laden had become an obsession. They told us about 20 or so meetings between Clinton officials and the Taliban, trying to reach an agreement to bring bin Laden out of Afghanistan. One day in the middle of the negotiations, a fax came rolling in at the White House from the reclusive Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar.
Dear President Clinton, we're all on the same side here. The Muslims and the Christians have a common enemy, the Jews. It's therefore incomprehensible to me that the United States would make the Taliban an enemy. In truth, we should join together and fight the common foe.
One fax said that. One fax was complaining again about how the Taliban was being treated and saying, just remember, no one who's ever confronted Islam before has ever survived, and if you're not careful, there will be terrible storms and earthquakes coming your way.
The Clinton years ended with a disputed election which resulted in an abbreviated transition. Benjamin and Simon say fighting terrorism took a backseat to bitterness on both sides.
There was a lot of distrust and a lot of, almost contempt, a lot of a feeling that the other guys just don't know.
There is an old saying that politics ends at the water's edge, that partisan fights and political distrust shouldn't infect foreign policy or national security. But Benjamin and Simon say that is exactly what happened throughout the 1990s and beyond, and that Americans have paid for it dearly.
I think one of the points of our book is that this is the kind of thing that a great country simply cannot afford. We really need to attend to the threats that are at hand. It's just too dangerous out there.
Former FBI Director Louis Freeh now is expected to testify next week before the House and Senate Intelligence Committees investigating 9/11.